Guys, 4 kilometers. That's all that separates 3 million people from eruptible magma sitting beneath their feet right now. Not dormant magma, not cooled rock, not a theoretical model from a textbook. Eruptible, active, sitting there right now underneath Naples. And scientists just confirmed it. I have to say, when I first read this study, I had to go back and read it again and then again, because the implications of what they found are almost too large to process. So let's talk about this, because this is not being covered the way it should be covered. And you deserve to know what's actually happening beneath one of the most densely populated cities in Europe. So here's the headline first. Researchers have identified a layer of eruptible magma sitting at a depth of roughly 4 kilometers. That's about 2.5 miles beneath the surface of the Campi Flegrei caldera, right under Naples. And this is not a fringe finding from one obscure paper. This is peer-reviewed, published in Nature Communications, one of the most respected scientific journals on the planet. And the researchers involved include scientists from the Istituto Nazionale di Geofisica e Vulcanologia. That's Italy's National Institute for Geophysics and Volcanology, the INGV. These are the people watching this thing every single day, and what they found should make everyone pay attention. Further into this video, I'm going to explain exactly why 4 kilometers is so terrifying. I'm going to tell you what's been happening to the ground above this magma, and I'm going to explain why the most densely populated volcanic area on Earth is sitting right on top of something that has not erupted in almost 500 years, but is waking up. Stay with me through this one, because this story gets bigger the deeper we go. So first, Campi Flegrei. Let me explain what we're actually dealing with here, because a lot of people hear Vesuvius and they think that's the only volcanic threat to Naples, right? Vesuvius, the famous one, the one that buried Pompeii. And yes, Vesuvius is still active, still dangerous, still monitored closely, but Campi Flegrei is different, and in many ways it is more frightening, because Vesuvius is a single peak. You can see it. You can point to it. You know where it is. Campi Flegrei is invisible. It translates from Italian as the Phlegrean Fields, the burning fields, and it sits to the west of Naples as a massive caldera system. A caldera, guys, is what's left after a volcanic system collapses inward after a catastrophic eruption. So the volcano already erupted so violently in the past that it essentially swallowed itself and left behind a giant basin. And that basin is now filled with towns, with harbors, with hotels and restaurants and schools and hospitals. And under all of that, the system is very much alive. The last major eruption of Campi Flegrei happened in 1538. That eruption built a brand new mountain called Monte Nuovo, New Mountain. It literally appeared from nothing in days, and that was considered a relatively minor eruption for this system. Before that, around 39,000 years ago, Campi Flegrei had what scientists call the Campanian Ignimbrite eruption, one of the largest volcanic events in European history. It changed climate. It deposited ash across the continent. Some researchers believe it contributed to the decline of Neanderthal populations in Europe. That's the scale we're talking about. And right now, scientists have found eruptible magma 4 kilometers down. Now, I want to explain something really important here, because this is where a lot of reporting gets sloppy. When we say eruptible magma, we don't just mean hot rock down there somewhere. Every volcano has that. What this study specifically found is that there is a zone of melt-bearing material where the magma has a high enough melt fraction, a high enough percentage of actual liquid molten rock versus crystallized solid material, that it could be mobilized, that it could move, that under the right triggering conditions, it would behave as a liquid capable of driving an eruption. The research team used seismic wave data to map what's down there. When seismic waves from earthquakes travel through the earth, they slow down when they pass through liquid or partial melt. That's a physical law. And what the researchers found is an anomaly in the seismic wave speeds at that 4-kilometer depth that is consistent with a zone of eruptible melt. They estimate the melt fraction in this zone could be somewhere between 10 and 20%. And here's the critical part: 10% melt fraction. That is the threshold. That is the line scientists use to define eruptible magma. This material is right at or above that line. Let that sink in. So we have a confirmed zone of material that meets the scientific definition of eruptible, sitting at 4 kilometers depth. That is 13,000 feet beneath the city, within what some researchers describe as striking distance of the surface in geological terms, and the ground above it has been moving. This is where it gets even more serious. And I have to tell you about the Bradycism, because this is the word you need to know. Bradycism. It comes from Greek, Brady's meaning slow, and seismos meaning shaking. It describes the slow vertical movement of the ground above a volcanic system, the ground literally rising and falling over months and years as magma and hydrothermal fluids move below. Campi Flegrei has been experiencing Bradycism for decades, but what has happened in recent years is remarkable, and it is alarming. Between 2005 and now, the ground at Campi Flegrei has risen by more than 1 meter, more than 3 feet, in some measurements closer to 1.5 meters. That is 150 centimeters of uplift in less than 20 years, and the rate has been accelerating. In 2023 alone, the INGV recorded ground uplift of around 20 centimeters in just 12 months. That is roughly 8 inches in 1 year. And alongside that uplift, the seismicity, the earthquake swarms, have also intensified. In September 2023, a magnitude 4.2 earthquake struck Campi Flegrei, the strongest in 40 years for that area. Buildings were cracked. People ran into the streets in panic. The Italian government raised the alert level for the first time in decades. Right now, as I record this video, Campi Flegrei sits at alert level yellow. That is the second level on Italy's 4-tier volcanic alert system: green, yellow, orange, red. Yellow means unrest is ongoing and conditions are being closely monitored. It means things are happening down there. It means the system is active. And beneath the rising ground and the swarm earthquakes, 4 kilometers down, sits eruptible magma. Now, I want to talk about the numbers because the human dimension of this is staggering. And I don't think most people outside of Italy fully grasp it. The metropolitan area of Naples has approximately 3 million people. 3 million? And within the Campi Flegrei caldera zone itself, in the towns that sit directly on top of this system, towns like Pozzuoli, Bacoli, Monte di Procida, you have hundreds of thousands of residents living, working, raising families directly above this thing. In the 1980s, there was a previous major Bradycism crisis at Campi Flegrei. The ground rose by nearly 2 meters in just a few years. It was so severe that the entire town of Pozzuoli, around 40,000 people, had to be relocated. The harbor was rising so fast that boats couldn't dock. Buildings were cracking and collapsing, and then the ground subsided again. And people came back because where do you go? This is their home. These families have been here for generations. Their history is here. Their businesses are here. Their entire lives are anchored to this place. And I asked myself the same question that I've asked when talking about Nisquemi in Sicily, when talking about Blatten in Switzerland. When we know something is dangerous, when the data is telling us something, why do people stay? And the honest answer is always the same. It's not stupidity, it's not ignorance, it's the impossible math of leaving everything behind. It's the fact that this volcano hasn't had a major eruption since 1538. So every generation that lives there and nothing happens reinforces the feeling that nothing will happen, but the ground is rising faster than it has in recorded modern history. And now we know there is eruptible magma 4 kilometers below. I did a little research into what the historical record tells us about Campi Flegrei eruptions and the warning signs that preceded them, because this is critical. What does the data from past episodes actually show us? In the period before the 1538 Monte Nuovo eruption, historical accounts describe years of ground uplift and increased earthquake activity. The Bradyseism was documented by observers at the time as something strange and frightening happening to the ground. The sea in the bay near Podswoli reportedly receded. Springs changed their behavior. Animals were behaving unusually. And then, over the course of just a few days in late September and early October 1538, a new mountain appeared from the earth. Now, here is what matters for today. The warning signs we see right now are not unlike the pattern that preceded 1538: sustained uplift, increasing seismicity, ground deformation, hydrothermal changes. The difference is that in 1538, monitoring was human observation with no instruments. Today, the INGV has GPS networks, satellite radar interferometry, seismic arrays, ground deformation sensors, gravity measurements, gas emission monitoring. They are watching every movement. And what they are seeing is continued accelerating uplift and a confirmed shallow body of eruptible magma. Now, I want to be very precise here because this is important and I have to be accurate. Does this mean Naples is about to erupt? No, I cannot say that. No scientist is saying that. The honest scientific assessment right now is that the system is in a state of significant unrest, that the risk is elevated compared to baseline, but eruption is not imminent in any confirmed timetable. The INGV is clear about this. Monitoring is continuous. Alert levels are in place for exactly this reason. But here is the thing that the new magma study forces us to confront. The old assumption about Campi Flegrei was that the magma was deep, that it was mostly crystallized, that it would take an enormous amount of energy and time for any eruption process to develop. The new data challenges that assumption. The magma is not as deep as previously modeled, and it is in a state that could support eruption at a threshold we now know is already reached in terms of melt fraction. That changes the risk calculus, not overnight, but in a meaningful way. So what should authorities do? What are they watching? What comes next? The INGV right now is tracking several key indicators. Ground deformation rate. If the uplift accelerates further or changes character, that is a critical signal. Seismicity patterns, not just the size of earthquakes, but their depth and their focal mechanisms. Are they getting shallower? Are they clustering in new zones? Gas emissions. Volcanic systems release gases, particularly sulfur dioxide and carbon dioxide. When magma rises or degasses more actively, gas emission rates change. Hydrothermal system behavior. The hot springs and fumaroles of Campi Flegrei are like a pressure gauge for what's happening below. And of course, the seismic imaging. Studies like the one we're discussing today are helping refine the picture of exactly where magma sits and how much of it is in an eruptible state. There is also a crucial question about what kind of eruption Campi Flegrei would produce if it were to erupt. And this is where the answer ranges from manageable to catastrophic depending on which scenario you model. At the smaller end, you could see something like 1538, a localized eruption building a new cone, devastating for the immediate area, requiring massive evacuation, but survivable with warning and preparation. At the larger end, a caldera-forming eruption, like the events tens of thousands of years ago. That scenario is what emergency planners call the worst case. An eruption of that scale would not just threaten Naples, it would affect southern Italy. It would project ash across Europe. It would ground aircraft across the continent. It would trigger climate effects, crop failures. The honest answer is we don't know which scenario would unfold if an eruption were to begin. And that uncertainty itself is part of what makes Campi Flegrei so deeply, deeply concerning. Italy has a national evacuation plan for Campi Flegrei. It exists. It is being updated. The plan involves moving hundreds of thousands of people out of the red zone in the event of an escalating alert. But evacuation drills in recent years have exposed serious problems: traffic, infrastructure bottlenecks. The sheer density of population in the area makes a rapid, organized evacuation enormously complicated, and the science is now telling us that the source of the potential eruption is closer to the surface than we thought. So, guys, why does this matter beyond Naples? Why should you care about this if you live in Germany or the UK or the United States? Because this is not a local story. This is a story about what happens when volcanic systems beneath megacities awaken. And there are more of these around the world than most people realize. We have the situation under Auckland in New Zealand. We have Yellowstone in the United States. We have Taal in the Philippines. We have Popocatépetl near Mexico City. We have systems in Indonesia that sit beneath tens of millions of people. Campi Flegrei is the case study, the one being watched, the one generating the research, the one showing us what the early and middle stages of volcanic reawakening look like in real time with real data, and what the data is now saying with the discovery of eruptible magma at 4 kilometers depth is that this system is more prepared to erupt than previous models suggested. It doesn't mean it will erupt next month. It doesn't mean it will erupt next year, but it does mean the margin between current conditions and eruption conditions is narrower than we previously believed, and 3 million people are living on top of it. I have said it before with earthquakes. I have said it with the landslides in Sicily. I have said it with the glacier collapse in Blatten. The Earth does not care about our timelines. It does not care about our plans. It does not wait for us to be ready. The ground beneath Naples has risen more than a meter in less than 2 decades. The rate is accelerating. Earthquakes are intensifying, and now a peer-reviewed study in Nature Communications has confirmed a zone of eruptible magma sitting at 4 kilometers depth, directly beneath one of the most populated cities in Europe. Can you really feel safe anywhere? Right? That's always the big question. And I don't ask it to scare you. I ask it because I think awareness is the only real tool we have. The people in Naples are not foolish for living there, but they deserve to know exactly what the science is showing. And the science right now is showing something that demands attention. The INGV scientists are doing extraordinary work. The monitoring systems are world-class. Italy has invested seriously in understanding and watching this system, and that is genuinely reassuring, but the magma is 4 kilometers down. It is eruptible, and the ground above it keeps rising, so I will stay on the pulse of this for you guys. If anything changes with the alert levels, if new data comes in, if the uplift rate shifts, you will hear about it here first. I've linked some related videos in the end screen. The one about Vesuvius and whether it's connected to Campi Flegrei's current unrest is one you should really watch next. And if you're new here, subscribe, click the notification bell. This channel covers exactly this kind of story, the ones that matter, the ones where the Earth is telling us something and we need to listen. If you want to support the channel, you can buy me a coffee. Link is in the description. I don't want to do a brand thing here. You know how it is. And if you want to become a member, click the join button and you get access to everything behind the scenes. Thank you, guys. Honestly, thank you for watching, for caring about this, for wanting to understand what's happening on this planet. Stay safe, guys. Be aware. Look up, look down, look left, look right. Anywhere, basically. Bye-bye.